Okay, so hear me out. What if the thing that was supposed to prepare you for life was actually the thing making you the least prepared for it? And I am not talking about the food in the cafeteria, though yes, that too. I am talking about the entire system, the bells, the desks, the homework that somehow always involved a poster board, the teacher who definitely had a favorite and it was never you. What if all of it, every single second of it, was quietly doing the opposite of what it promised? Because here is the uncomfortable part. You spent 13 years being trained to sit still, raise your hand before speaking, memorize information you would never use, and perform for a grade. And then on your first day in the real world, someone looked at you and said, okay, be creative, take initiative, handle conflict, manage your time, communicate your value, and for the love of everything, do not just sit there waiting to be told what to do. And you sat there, waiting to be told what to do, because that is literally all you knew how to do. So what happens when you rip the whole thing out and replace it with actual life? What happens to kids who learn by doing instead of by listening to someone talk about doing? What does a world without schools even look like? And more importantly, why does a part of you already think it sounds kind of amazing, and also terrifying at the same time? For real bro here, where we say what no one else will. Shh. And before we go any further, here is something nobody is asking. If schools disappeared tomorrow, would you actually be worse off than you are right now, or would you just be different? Because those are not the same thing, and that difference is going to change everything you think you know about learning, growing up, and what it actually means to be ready for life. Stick around because this gets uncomfortable fast. Part 1. The lie we were all sold before we were old enough to question it. Let us go back. You are 6 years old. Somebody puts you in a building, gives you a schedule, tells you when to eat, when to move, when to be quiet, and when to perform. You do not question this because you are 6, and you do not question anything yet. This is just life. This is just what happens. You show up, you sit down, you absorb, you repeat. And honestly, for the first couple of years, it kind of works. You learn letters and numbers and the general concept of not hitting people who take your stuff. Solid foundation. Nobody is complaining. But then something weird happens around year 4 or 5 of this experiment. The content stops being about you and starts being about the test. And the test is not about whether you understand something. The test is about whether you can demonstrate that you understand something in the exact, specific way the test expects you to demonstrate it. These are not the same thing. And deep down, every student on Earth has always known they are not the same thing. You have met someone who could not pass a spelling test to save their life, but wrote the most devastating text messages you have ever received in your life. You know someone who failed chemistry but can fix any engine you put in front of them. You know someone who got straight A's and cannot figure out how to split a dinner bill without panicking. The system was measuring something. It just was not measuring what it said it was measuring. Here is the hidden truth nobody puts on a motivational poster. School was never primarily designed to prepare you for life. It was designed to prepare you for employment, specifically employment in a factory-era economy where the most valuable skill a person could have was showing up on time, following instructions without asking too many questions, and producing consistent output. The bells were not an accident. They were rehearsal. Clock in, clock out, do not deviate. And that system made complete sense for the world it was built for. The problem is that world is largely gone and we are still running the rehearsal. So the question is not whether schools have value. The question is whether the version of schools we inherited from a completely different century still makes sense for this one. And if the answer is no, then what actually replaces it? Things are about to get much bigger than you expected. Part 2. What learned experience actually does to a human brain. Okay, so let us say the schools close. Not collapse and chaos, just they close. Doors shut. Curriculum gone. And instead, children learn by doing. Sounds pretty great, right? Kind of like a fantasy summer camp that never ends. And also somehow makes you good at things. Here is what research actually shows, and this is genuinely wild. Humans learn through something called experiential encoding, which means information that arrives through direct physical experience gets stored differently in the brain than information that arrives through passive listening. It is not just stored differently. It is retained more deeply, recalled more easily, and transferred more effectively to new situations. In plain terms, you remember how to ride a bike because you rode a bike. You do not remember the capital of Wyoming because someone told you the capital of Wyoming in 7th grade while you were thinking about lunch. So, in a world of lived experience learning, you are not sitting in a room being told about supply and demand. You are running a small business and watching your savings disappear in real time because you priced your product wrong. You are not reading about ecosystems. You are growing food and watching what happens when you do it badly. You are not taking a test on communication skills. You are negotiating with a real adult who does not care about your feelings and needs results by Thursday. The retention rate on that kind of lesson is about 10,000% higher than anything a textbook ever gave you. And here's what becomes interesting. Kids raised in high-experience environments, unschooled kids, apprenticeship kids, kids raised in working families who brought them into real work early, consistently demonstrate something surprising. They are not just more practically skilled, they are more emotionally resilient, more creative under pressure, and dramatically better at self-directing their own learning. Because nobody taught them to wait for permission to figure something out. But quietly, carefully, here's where the first crack appears. The thing helping you learn faster might also be leaving something out. Something you cannot see is missing until you need it and it is not there. And that something is going to show up later in the story in a way you are not expecting. Part 3. The hidden tax of learning everything the hard way. So you learn through experience. Beautiful. You are competent, resilient, curious, and self-directed. You have calloused hands and a low tolerance for unnecessary meetings, which honestly puts you ahead of most people already. But here is the bill. Lived experience is an extraordinary teacher with one catastrophic flaw. It is not evenly distributed. Not even a little. Not even close. If your lived experience happens to involve a parent who is a surgeon, you learn medicine by proximity. And if your lived experience involves poverty, instability, survival mode parenting, absent adults, or just plain bad luck, then your lived experience teaches you something completely different. It teaches you how to manage scarcity, how to navigate systems that were not built for you, how to make things work when the resources are not there, which is genuinely valuable. And also not the same as getting a front-row education and how the upper end of the economy functions. Here is the uncomfortable realization nobody in the abolish school crowd wants to sit with. School, for all its flaws, is one of the only places where a kid from a difficult home environment gets to sit next to a kid from a comfortable one, where the curriculum is the same regardless of what your parents do for work. Where a curious kid from nowhere can encounter an idea that changes their life because it was on a test they had no choice but to take. You were trapped inside something you thought you wanted. The freedom of lived experience comes with a price tag that gets charged to the kids who can least afford to pay it. So now you are not just questioning schools. You are questioning whether removing them makes the gap between people larger or smaller. And that question has a much darker answer than you were hoping for. Part 4. The thing nobody admits about what schools are actually replacing. Here is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, and I need you to stay with me because this one hits. School does not just teach content. School is doing something else that nobody lists on the curriculum because it would sound too raw to put on official paperwork. School is parenting children that their parents do not have time to parent. School is socializing kids who would otherwise only know the worldview of their immediate household. School is providing structure to children whose home environments have none. School is feeding children who would not otherwise be fed. School is the reason a kid with a difficult home life has somewhere safe to go for 8 hours a day. And when you imagine abolishing it and replacing it with lived experience, you have to ask whose life they are living. Because for a kid in a stable, loving, resourced household, lived experience learning sounds like the most enriching thing imaginable. And for a kid in a chaotic, unsafe, under-resourced household, removing school does not set them free. It just leaves them alone with the chaos for longer. The hilarious self-sabotage of this entire debate is that the people most loudly advocating for the abolition of traditional schooling are almost always people whose own school experience was fine. People who had options. People who had backup. people who could afford to be critical of the institution because the institution had already given them enough to stand on while they criticized it. Which is very funny and also kind of tragic if you look at it long enough. But here is the contradiction that makes your brain short-circuit. The strongest argument for abolishing schools and the strongest argument for keeping schools are actually the same argument. Both are trying to protect the most vulnerable kid in the room. They just disagree violently on which kid that is and what protecting them actually looks like. There is one final truth nobody saw coming. Part 5. What this was actually about the whole time. Okay. Pull back. Step all the way out. This whole conversation was never really about schools. It was about something much older and much more personal than any curriculum. It was about the terrifying gap between being taught and actually knowing. Between being prepared and actually being ready. Between learning about the world and actually living in it. Because here is the thing every single person watching this has felt at some point. You sat in a classroom for years. You took the tests. You got the diploma. You walked out. And within about 6 months of real life you realized you were missing something fundamental that nobody had ever addressed. Something about how money actually works. Something about how relationships actually require maintenance. Something about how failure does not reset like a bad grade. It accumulates and stays with you. Something about how nobody is going to tell you what to do next. That feeling? That disorientation? That is not a personal failure. That is structural. That is a gap that was always there. And the reason it feels so personal is because the system spent 13 years making you feel like if something was wrong, it was probably your fault. Here is the theory reveal. The debate between schools and lived experience is actually a debate about who gets to decide what a prepared person looks like. And the answer has always been the same. And it is not the government, and it is not the market, and it is not the curriculum committee. The answer is you. The prepared person is whoever decided to keep learning after everyone stopped telling them they had to. The school could be a classroom. The school could be a kitchen. The school could be a conversation with someone 30 years older who made every mistake you are about to make and will watch you make it anyway, because that is just how it works. The form does not matter as much as the intent behind it. And here is the callback you did not see coming. Remember at the beginning when I said the system trained you to sit still, raise your hand and wait for permission? The most successful people in every field, the ones who actually learn from lived experience and from formal education, they are not the ones who rejected one in favor of the other. They are the ones who stopped waiting for permission to learn from whatever was in front of them. Which means the school was never the problem. The waiting was the problem. And you carried that habit right out the front door with your diploma and your poster board and your complete inability to ask for help without feeling like you are failing a test. Damn. So here's where I leave you. Drop in the comments, what is the single thing you were never taught in school that blindsided you the hardest when real life showed up? And I do not mean the dramatic stuff. I mean the small, embarrassing, nobody warned me about this stuff. Like taxes, or how to negotiate your salary, or the fact that friendships require active maintenance and do not just automatically continue existing because you want them to. Go. I will wait. And if you want to keep having these conversations where we say out loud the things everyone is quietly thinking, you could always stick around. Or not. That is a decision you are free to make entirely on your own, without raising your hand first. Look at you, already living the experience.